6.3 is going to cover the Constitution. So we're going to look through the Constitution and see what all the different parts of it are. A constitution is a written compact that defines and limits the powers of the rulers of a sovereign nation. So that means a constitution, and various countries have constitutions. We're not the only one. It basically defines what those in power can and what they cannot do. States are behaving like 13 squabbling children at the point. So they're going to call a constitutional convention so that they can work out what is going on between the states, work out what they can do to make it a better governing document for that of the country. The Constitutional Convention will be held in Philadelphia. It's also known as the Philadelphia Convention or the Federal Convention. It lasts from May 25th to September 17th, 1787. 55 delegates around the states at that time will come together. Unfortunately, various individuals, because of the squabbling, will leave. So by the time they finally reach the document that we have today, there are only 39 of them left. All of them are white men from the economic elite. And for the most part, many of them are only going to think about what needs to be done for the economic elite. It was intended only to revise the Articles of Confederation. They're going to choose George Washington to be the individual who presides over the convention. Most active participant during the convention would be James Madison. He believed the new nation needed a strong central government, weaker state legislatures, and power to restrain the excessive democratic impulses by the common people. He believed that the Constitution needs to come together and really establish itself as a document where the economic elite still hold more power. When the convention begins, there's going to be some issues between the two of them. We have the Virginia Plan, which was presented May 29th, 1789, shortly after the Constitutional Convention began. It was written by James Madison. It's known as the Large States Plan. Many individuals did not want to fix the Articles of Confederation. They believed that it was too weak of a document, that they needed to write a new constitution. He proposed a very powerful bicameral legislature. Both houses are determined proportionately, meaning they would be based on population. The lower house would be elected by the people, and then the upper house, which would be the Senate, would be chosen by the lower house. Ultimately, it will be rejected because it gives too much power to the large states versus that of the small states. That's why it's known as the Large States Plan. The rebuttal to this will be the Small States Plan, or the New Jersey Plan, written by William Paterson on June 14th, 1787. It's a rebuttal to the Virginia Plan, closer to the initial call for the Constitutional Convention. It drafted amendments to the Articles of Confederation, and the existing Continental Congress would remain. So there would still only be one vote per state. And granted new powers, the power to levy taxes and force their collection. A multi-person executive branch would have been created. They wanted 3 presidents to be elected by the Congress, in which each of those presidents would only serve 1 term, and they could be recalled by Congress if they did something wrong. It would create a judiciary branch that would serve for life, to be appointed by the executive branch. Any laws set up by Congress would then take precedent over the state laws. However, this gives too much power not enough power to the large states, so they're going to reject this as well. A month later, we're going to come back and we're going to have what is known as the Great Compromise. July 16, 1787, Roger Sherman and Oliver Ellsworth from Connecticut, they're going to come together and create a compromise for a bicameral legislature. You have the executive and the judicial branches that would be created. So it is the best parts of each plan. Signers called themselves Federalists. When it comes to Native Americans, they're considered to have their own nations, so they were never considered citizens under the Constitution, so they didn't have any support for them. Slavery, there was a big division between the North and the South, starting with the drafting of the Constitution. In 1787, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are going to ban slavery completely, while they are, because they support a free nation. Women are totally ignored and left out. They're considered too weak for politics. Judith Sargent Murray is going to be a very big, outspoken individual. She talks about rights and liberties they fought for as patriots, and that belonged to women as well as men. And they're going to argue for gender equality. So they're really going to push for equality amongst them. So now we're going to look at the breakdown of the Constitution. So we're going to go through the articles, and then we'll go through all the amendments. So in the House of Representatives, this is Article 2. In the House of Representatives, they're going to serve 2 years. There's no limit to those terms because they get to establish how many, the rules for their own seats. It must be 25 years old to be in the House of Representatives. You have to be a U.S. citizen for 7 years. It is based on population, so 1 per 30,000 citizens with a minimum of 1. So 1 person for every 30,000 citizens in population for your state. The 3/5 compromise will count slaves as 3/5 a person to determine population and state electors. They have the power of impeachment. Impeachment is just charges brought against a high official, such as a governor or a president in the U.S. government. Now, the next part of this section, Article 2, is on the Senate. And they will serve 6 terms. Elections are on a 2-year rotation. There are no term limits, so every 2 years, 1/3 of our senators will be elected. You must be 30 years old, a U.S. citizen for 9 years. They're limited to 2 per state. Powers include that of the vice president presides over the Senate. You have the power to try all impeachment. So they're the ones who actually take the impeachment proceedings, and they decide through a trial what will happen. You need a 2/3 majority to convict an individual that is being impeached. And persons can be removed from office for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. When it comes to the presidency, this is Article 3. The president serves 4 terms or a 2-term limit. There will be an amendment that will change this, but for now, they serve a 4-year term, and they can be reelected 1 more time. They must be 35 years old. They have to be a natural born citizen, meaning born in the United States or on a territory or a location that is owned by the U.S. They must be a resident for at least 14 years prior to running for office, meaning they have to live here in the country for 14 years. Powers include being the commander-in-chief, meaning the head of the military. They can make treaties and nominations to federal office. Article 4 covers that of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, and this is our current Supreme Court here in 2021, they're appointed by the president, and they can serve as long as they're on good behavior. So as long as they wish. Ruth Bader Ginsburg served until she died. So they can serve for a very long time. They don't have to retire or quit. Other articles to the Constitution include if you flee a state after committing a crime, that state can ask for your return. Once a state is formed, you cannot break up into other states, and that Congress needs 2/3 of Congress to make any amendments to the Constitution. Throughout all of this, in the beginning, the Federalist Papers will be written by James Madison, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton. There are 85 essays defending the new Constitution. Paper campaign explaining what those documents are. criticized for not having a Bill of Rights, but they will add one later. That comes with the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Washington feared that the greatest threat to democracy would be the rise in factions, such as two political parties. So he's going to really ask others to not be part of political parties. Though we are today very polarized with our two political parties that we have. There are other political parties, but they don't have as much sway as the two. He believed that if two political parties came into power, that they could become tyrants as they fight with each other. Additions to the Constitution, meaning the amendments, in May of 1789, James Madison will propose the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Originally, it was 12, but only 10 of them will get approved. It applies to all white male property owners. Women and individuals of color were not considered to be citizens. The built-in flaw is there's no protection for citizens whose states violated their civil rights. So there's nothing in the Constitution about civil rights in the first parts. It's not until the amendments that we have any changes. Some states do not sign or ratify the Constitution until the addition of the Bill of Rights, which will be several years later in 1791. So you're going to move on to the next video, which is just the amendments.